Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really into the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London, where you will find stuff probably unavailable anywhere else. We're an established group with a large membership, and best of all, we're friendly. The link is in the YouTube description section.
One of Britain's most notorious criminals has booked a table at a dinner dance in Manchester to celebrate his 70th birthday. At this late stage in his life, Frank Fraser is determined to enjoy himself. He's been out of prison for 4 years, his longest period of freedom.
Where's the governor of Strangeways?
Fraser has spent 40 years, the equivalent of his girlfriend's lifetime, in prison. He met Marilyn in Parkhurst when she was visiting her father, Tom Wisby, one of the great train robbers. Marilyn was 9 years old when the £2.5 million robbery took place. Her dream is to become a professional singer.
You and me, we wanted it all. We wanted it all. Without pain, sunshine without rainy day. We wanted it always, you and me.
It's 31 years since the robbery that made British criminal history. It wasn't just the amount that stunned the public. The Queen's train had been attacked, carrying the Royal Mail from Glasgow to London. The message from the Underworld was that everything was up for grabs. For criminals, the train proved that the best time to attack was when money was on the move. In the 60s, when workers took their wages home in cash, there was no softer target than the payroll. Hardened criminals started to plan their raids with callous disregard for their victims.
You've got to be prepared for violence. You go on business to expect violence, to use violence. And, you know, you've got to. You know, it's not a softy sort of a thing, really. You know, if it's got to be used, it's got to be used.
In 1962, 9 months before the Great Train Robbery, violence was used in a raid on the offices of BOAC at London Airport. The attackers escaped through the perimeter fence with £62,000.
This was one of the most daring and vicious wages snatches carried out for a very long time. Its story is both fascinating and disturbing.
At the time, no one knew the significance of this robbery. Police rounded up some likely suspects, including Gordon Goody and his associate Charlie Wilson. In fact, they had carried out the airport raid to give them enough money to live off while they planned for the train. But another future train robber was not picked up by the police. Buster Edwards, who now runs a stall outside London's Waterloo station, has been portrayed in films as a lovable rogue, but he was as ruthless as the rest of them.
We were the cream, 8, 10 firms. You know, we was all tops at what we were doing. And it was Charlie Wilson's information. He had someone in the airport who mentioned that a large amount of money was moved from the bank to Comet House. And it was supposed to be 400 grand. In them days, you could just walk into Comet House, which we did. Go to the top floor where the toilets were, look out the toilets. You could actually see the money being loaded onto the van at the bank, and then drove round the roundabout and come and park outside Comet House. So it really was, again, well, not easy, but it was all straightforward. And there was an old boy out there cleaning the toilets. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't say a word. We've come down in a lift. It stopped at each floor, but it was all right. There wasn't people waiting. When we come out on the ground floor, there was the box in front of us, big box. It was really big, with the 2 security guards and the 2 cashiers. The poor geezers who had the box, I mean, they must have wondered what had happened. You see these madmen rushing out the lift, waving koshes about, I mean, you're a thief for the money, but obviously excitement does play a very big part. Perhaps there shouldn't have been violence, but they're there. They couldn't move quick enough. When I say they ran, I mean, we was out there so quick onto the box, they were still there in front of us, so that they did get a couple of clumps.
Who did you hit?
I think I hit a man called Howes.
Some of them had stocking masks, all armed with short pickels. They were very vicious. One man rushed at me while I was fighting this man off. Another man covered me at the back.
I'm afraid his head opened, I split his head open.
How do you feel about that now?
I don't feel anything about it when it was part of what I was doing at the time. It's no good. I can't have regrets. I regret none of my life. I really don't.
There's no sympathy either for the driver of the train, Jack Mills, who also had his head split open. The robber's enemy is the man who's prepared to have a go. He has the potential to ruin the most carefully laid plans, and he's dealt with ruthlessly. The train robbers have always sought to minimise driver Mills' injuries.
He got a minor hit on the head, which gave him 3 stitches and a scalp wound. Again, one of the lies about the train. This terribly beaten up train driver. I mean, if you see him next day in the papers or the television, I mean, he's talking quite naturally. He wasn't hurt at all.
Did any of them speak to you?
Yes, 3 of them.
What did they say?
Oh, the only thing they did was threaten me. One man kept wiping the blood from out of my eyes. And afterwards, one of the men, when I was lying on the grass, he said, if you hadn't to grapple with me, I wouldn't have hit you.
But you felt you had to?
Well, I wanted to save my train if possible. I thought there was only 2 bandits. And now, of course, they're no different.
The train robbers have always felt irritated by the public's sympathy for Jack Mills. But they stick to the old Underworld code of not grassing on the man who cost him.
I think it was Buster, wasn't it? No, I don't know. I don't really know. I think in the melee, it could have been anyone, because you get 3 or 4 people in that cabin. I mean, it's a lot of people, and I think basically it could have been anyone,
I admitted to hitting him, but as I say, I couldn't hit him because I'm 5 foot, whatever. He was above me. Anyway, the person who hit him, I know who hit him. Everyone knows who hit him, but he don't want to admit to hitting Mills, so I have to leave it at that.
At the trial, much was made of Mills' injuries. The robbers expected to get 10 to 18 years, but the judge said they were an intolerable menace to the well-being of society and handed down exemplary sentences of 30 years apiece.
It was just a shock. I mean, a complete shock. I thought he was off his head. I thought it was a bingo hall. 30, you know what I mean? Can't believe it. Wayne, you know. And when I turned round, the flying squad was at the back. All of them, they brought all the flying squad, who's who, you know. And one went to me, pointed at me and went, you'll come out in a wheelchair. You know what I mean?
Mr. Justice Davis said he had done all in his power to ensure that this would be the last robbery of its kind. He called it a sordid crime of violence inspired by greed. But to the underworld, the sentences were no deterrent. In 1962, Don Barrett had just served 4 years for robbery with violence. He lost all his remission for attacking prison warders. His next targets were security vans.
They were becoming the in thing with the criminal fraternity. You had people like myself and a great number of others in London and out of London that were robbing security vans because they were that easy or simple, if you like. You can see by this van. Well, it's what we would call an old pig in the trade. You know, if you couldn't get into this, you'd go and get a job and go to work on a building site. I have to admit, in the early days, we were rather like cowboys. We would be firm-handed, 6-, 7-handed, and we would arrive in a transit van.
The guard gives the all clear, and fast and surely...
Security firms sold themselves on their ability to cope with brutal attacks. But for the guards, it was a horrific experience.
This is a vulnerable point.
Because the guard had a stave, or because he had a dog, the attack would be sharp and vicious, and their guards would be given no chance to release the dog or use their staves. It was just surprising them. If the guards dropped the bag, all well and good. If not, then of course we would use the sticks as we had in those days, with ammonia.
The bandits are breaking off now. They're just running for a minute.
It wasn't nice, but it was, I could almost say, a foolproof way of getting the bag, because it didn't matter how big it was, how tough it was. If someone hit you or sprayed ammonia on you was in very bad pain.
The security companies brought in visors to protect the guards' faces and strengthen the vans. But the robbers relied on staying one jump ahead and were quick to identify new and as yet unprotected targets. Banks were the next on the list.
Certainly in the early 60s, the bank robberies started to take off with a vengeance. At the time, there was no anti-bandit glass. And it was the fact that, in the end, it was so easy to go in a bank and jump over the bank counter and pick up a sack of money and run out again, and you might wind up with 30 grand or 40 grand, which was a lot of money in the time, the period that we're talking about.
Although robbers got a lot of money, they got long sentences too. Bobby King's been going straight since he came out of prison in 1980. As a youth, he was attracted to the lifestyle enjoyed by his criminal friends.
The other guys, they had really sharp cars, really nice suits, good-looking girlfriends, much more attractive lifestyle.
Right. How does it feel?
So, quite consciously, I thought, I think I'd rather have some of that than some of this. And that's what sort of started it off, I suppose.
And the position of the first patron.
Yeah.
All right, on the
I
level
think male
yes, you're going to have the best
ego came a lot into it because of the prestige it gave you.
Two. On his side showing. Two?
Two, I think, Stephanie.
Yeah,
Fine. Too flashy.
Fine.
But when you went out and pulled a girl, you felt good. Because you knew you had a tasty mower, you had a tasty whistle, you had money.
How does it feel now?
And for many working class women, this was very attractive. Didn't matter if you was as ugly as sin. And you had absolutely nil personality. But you suddenly became a more attractive proposition. And that sort of feeling of being something gave you this more confident air.
In the underworld, contacts are made in prison. During an early sentence for burglary, King teamed up with some armed robbers.
We found that robbing an ordinary bank in a really easy place to rob, it didn't really have much of a payoff, because all you would get was what was in the counters. And that was 6, 7, 8, if you were very lucky, 9 grand. And we were 3 or 4 handed. And you were just really wasting your time, because you knew you was going to get 10, 12 years if you got caught for it. So it had to be a lot more. We sat around thinking, well, there are big drops and there are big pickups. Bank vans would come round to, like, mother banks. And when something happened regularly, then you knew that that was the best time to hit a bank, because there'd be lots of dough either waiting there or just about to be delivered there. So it needed really precision planning and second timing, and nothing had to go wrong. It was like really taking candy off a kid. It was very easy. You just had to have the bottle to do it.
Bottle came from guns, which were readily available in the underworld of the 1960s.
Came out of prison in 62, and people were then using guns. And if I met an associate who I was going to work with, he would say, "Have you got a tool?" And I would say, "No, I've got a tool." "Well, take that."
We found that if you went into a bank and you immediately let one go off in the ceiling of a sawn-off shotgun, the bang and the plaster and the confusion it would cause and the menacing effect of seeing guns, people would just shit themselves.
When we used the shotgun, it was for show. So we'd take the shells and take the shot actually shot out of these shells and replace that with rice. And we put just ordinary household rice inside the shell. Now we'd let one go, it'd make a noise, and the only stuff that would come out would be rice.
It was a means to an end. That's all the gun was. The gun gives you the advantage of being able to say to a guy, "Do as you're told, get on the floor or get in there," or what have you. I mean, if you was to walk in a firm and you never had a gun, and you would say to the employees, "Get on the floor," they'd probably jump on you, wouldn't they? So you had to have a deterrent, and that was the gun.
Daylight robbery shatters the familiar routine of bank staff and customers alike. The aim is to terrify them into submission.
We went into a place and a woman was stood by the wall, absolutely petrified, and I tried to reassure her by putting my hand on her and saying, "Just sit down, don't worry, love, nothing will happen to you." The mere fact of me touching her just absolutely broke her completely. She just went into hysterics, the fear. And I learnt that by that thing, that you never touched anybody, you never went near them.
There was a young lass behind the counter, 17, 18 I suppose, and she was just absolutely pissing herself with fear. And it really sort of stuck in my mind. I mean, I ain't got much of a social conscience, but I think that did do me in a bit.
To go in, to contain them, to frighten them, terrorise them if you wish, verbally, by your appearance, by how you conducted the business of carrying out the robbery. There was no messing about. We know it was wrong, but we was there to get the prize.
Such ruthless professionalism meant Don Barrett was in demand. It also made him difficult to get on with.
He was very intimidating, very fast, very quick, very to the point. He used to get it done.
If you said to me, do you want to go out for a drink tonight with Bob, I'd say no, because I didn't like the man.
For me, he was too needlessly aggressive and violent. He was and unpleasant with it.
He was just a guy who was on the pavement getting a living, who was a bit of a supercilious git. Everyone knew what Bob was like, but yeah, he was a good worker and he did his part of it.
There was friction whenever these freelance operators teamed up. Barrett saw himself as a commando. He disapproved of King's relaxed attitude when they went on raids.
We were all sitting there in the motor, and one of the guys suddenly went, hi ho, and we all went, hi ho, it's off to work we go, and there's sort of mad laughter. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of, you're on this sort of unnatural high.
You can't mess about. Messing about gets you nicked. Now, you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. And if you're going to mess about, go home, because I don't want to work with you. You're there to do what you're going to do. It's a business and your liberty's at stake.
Another regular member of the team was a man who would become infamous, Bertie Smalls.
He was a pretty ambitious sort of criminal, and he was hip to what we were up to. And I took a shine to him straight away because he was clearly had a sort of professional attitude towards doing this sort of thing, and he was very he was ambitious.
Like most robbers, Smalls was full of aggression, which he made little effort to control.
As we were driving across Wimbledon Common, we were driving very sedately, all suited and booted, short haircuts, just looked like four travelling salesmen, businessmen out on a meeting. Don't draw any attention to yourself. Bring a jag. Look sweet. And in my rear view mirror, I could see these 5 Hell's Angels. And they was buzzing around us all the time. So I said, shit, what are we going to do now? In those days, I was really quite going for all this. Bertie Smalls said, call the robbery off. Let's do them. So we all got out of the vehicle and all pulled our shooters out. We just shot their motorbikes to bits, got back in the car, laughing our balls off. So, I think they're villains. You know, we just loved it. We just called the robbery off and we'd do it later. Did it about a month later. Still scored about 70 grand we got.
The gang went on to steal £238,000 from Barclays in Ilford in February 1970. It was the largest bank robbery in Britain. The gang always tried to attack where they were least expected.
I happened upon Bournemouth in Paul Hill because it was packed out with holiday makers, young couples with their kids and stuff like that, so you just melted into the background, sat on it and watched it, and it was a piece of cake.
The calm of a small provincial bank was about to be shattered.
Bournemouth was a very quiet place. Retired people lived there, not like London, where it was the least expected place to have robberies. And it was only a small branch. It wasn't the main branch in Bournemouth.
Valerie Buckinger was behind the counter. She was 24 and 3 months pregnant with her first child.
They were after the Securicor money. Normally, the first cashier, used to bring it to the front of the bank already in a sack, ready for them to collect, so that there was no hanging about. On this particular day, he just didn't do it. I don't know why, but it just didn't happen. So when they came in, the sack of money was not there.
It worked out that we hit it about either a couple of minutes too early or a couple of minutes too late, but we missed it, never got it. All we got was what was in the counters.
The door burst open. They came into the banking hall. They put a shot into the floor with a sawn-off shotgun. One jumped on the counter.
So I leapt onto the counter and laid the bank staff down. Mickey Salmons was the man that went over the counter to retrieve the sack of money, which wasn't there.
You're just doing your normal day's job, and then somebody confronts you with a gun. And everything seems to stop for that moment. All you can think of is that gun that's pointing at you, and you are very frightened. And I ended up cowering in the corner, screaming, because there was a similar sort of backdrop as this, but it wasn't quite as big. And he said to me, if you don't stop screaming, I'll shoot you.
The bank manager was prepared to have a go.
I became angry. That was my reaction, really. That they should disturb this little branch office in this way. And all I could find to do anything about it was a paperweight, which I picked up.
Silly fella threw a glass paperweight at me, which had it hit me would have probably knocked me sparko or unconscious.
I missed, but he had a sawn-off shotgun in his hands, and as he fell back off the counter, he fired a shot.
And I fired a shot by standing on the counter into the ceiling.
I can see it now. It won't ever go, because it's a thing that, although things fade, perhaps the date faded and things like that, actually coming across the counter at me and him coming in and telling me to shut up, otherwise he was going to shoot me. I can see it today.
The shock could have caused a miscarriage. The raid netted just over £2,000. It led to Barrett's arrest. In 6 years, he had taken part in around 40 armed robberies, but it was only done for Bournemouth.
I pleaded guilty to that robbery because there were certain things that I didn't want to come out. It's as simple as that. So I pleaded guilty to the Bournemouth bank robbery and received 12 years.
But that didn't stop the raids. By the summer of 1972, there was an armed bank robbery in London every 5 days. £3 million had been stolen in just 3 years. The police were under pressure to start making arrests. On the 10th of August, it took a gang just 90 seconds to seize £138,000 from Barclays Bank in Wembley. The raid bore the usual hallmarks.
It was ruthlessly executed because at least 2 of the 7-man gang had got shotguns. They weren't afraid to use them. A number of shots were fired.
Scotland Yard formed the robbery squad. An informant said Bertie Smalls had led the raid, but it was difficult to get a positive ID because they'd all been wearing masks.
And do many of them wear this kind of mask?
It's a number. It's a number.
Yes. You can buy these from very hot though. You can buy these from these novelty shops.
Smalls was arrested on Christmas Eve in 1972. The police were desperate to stop the robberies and offered an unprecedented deal. Bertie Smalls became the first supergrass. In return for shopping his associates, one of Britain's most brutal armed robbers was allowed to go free. He was guaranteed immunity from prosecution and kept all his money. But he dared not show his face in the underworld.
What were you thinking at the time?
I was thinking, how am I going to get out of this lot? You know?
Why did you decide that you would cooperate with the police?
Well, to get myself off the hook. To get my freedom. Put someone in it, you know? As cold-blooded as that.
The underworld could not believe that one of their own would turn against them. In the spring of 1973, Bobby King was in the High Court, finalising his divorce. when the robbery squad arrived.
I said to my barrister, I said to her, I think I'm about to be nicked here. I said, I don't want you to move from my side so they can't verbal me up. And she said, oh, don't be silly. She said, you can't be arrested for getting divorced. I said, I know it's for being divorced. I said, they're about to nick me. Anyway, when the case was finished, when it was adjourned, I was stuck right close to her. And we went out the door, and all of a sudden, these about 5 or 6 coppers just all pulled up and shoot us out. Robert King, you're under arrest. You know what it's for. Bertie's done the business on you.
Small's evidence jailed 20 of his associates for a total of 308 years. Bobby King got 16 years, Don Barrett 17. The Underworld's code of silence had been smashed.
If you've got a guy who comes along and grasses you and who's been on the pavement with you, who you've risked your liberty with, who you've got money with, who you've drunk with, who you've had a crack with, at the end of the day he rolls over, you want to kill the bastard. I mean, let's make no bones about that. I say categorically that every grass should have had a bullet in his head. Had Bert had one in the head, that would have finished the Supergrass system. It would never have taken off.
There was talk of taking out a contract on Smalls, but nobody was prepared to put up the money. Don Barrett served 10 years. Prison didn't reform him.
I come out with nothing. I hadn't changed my line of thought on living, and I was released on the Monday. I robbed a security van on the Wednesday, and I robbed another security van on the Saturday. So I hadn't changed, you know, I was still determined to be an armed robber, if you like, and get the easy money.
Within 7 months, Barrett was back inside. He blamed the reckless behaviour of an associate. This firm believer in the code of the underworld was beginning to waver.
I thought to myself, well, I've just finished a 17 down to a grass. And I'm not going back for another 17 down to dumbos who not only couldn't do their work properly, but had got you nicked. Now, rightly or wrongly, and in the eyes of the chaps that was wrong, I decided that if someone's going to make statements and put people in it, it was going to be me and not them. And it was a cold, calculated decision. And I thought, if someone's going to do this, I'll do it. And fuck you. And that's what I did. There were no bones about it. Afterwards, after you've signed your statements, is when it hits. You then start realising how you've ostracised yourself from, we'll say, the criminal fraternity. I would think about different people who I was tight with, who I had a good name with, who I trusted, same as they had trusted me. But it was either that or go back to prison for a very, very, very long time.
Barrett, who shows no remorse for any of his robberies, is ashamed of being a supergrass. But it was worth it. He could have got 14 years. Sentenced to 7, he served just over 2.
The atmosphere was diabolical. You got guys who were throwing their urine out the window above you. They used to at one time make us go over to pick our meals up from the kitchen, whereby guys would either spit in it or do whatever they could do. And it got so bad that some of the supergrasses would retaliate by jumping over the counter and chase the prisoners.
Barrett thought he'd have to go straight. On his release, he worked briefly as a scaffolder, but decided to go back to armed robbery. He found the underworld was pragmatic.
People get a certain reputation over the years. They're either good workers or they're not good workers. They're either money getters or they're not money getters. I came out and eventually saw a friend of mine who put me in touch with a guy named David Kray. He knew that I had just come out of prison. He knew that I was an ex-SG. He agreed to work with me. We talked about why I'd done the business, and I explained it. But I think the crux of the matter was that it was seen by everybody that once a grass, you could never be a grass again. You couldn't go around a second time.
With the experience he'd got over the years, Barrett was confident that he could organise a raid at the Armour Guard security depot. The robbery was planned with chilling precision.
We thought we would try and take Armour Guard out completely. So each morning we would drive at 6 o'clock when they got there for work. Dave would get in the boot of a car and I would park it and leave him there. We would drill holes in the boot or at the side so that he could observe the guards arriving, how many guards there was, who was the guy that unlocked, who went in, who came out. And we would then start taking the guards home, following them home by stages.
Good night. Joe Symes, an Armour Guard employee, was the target. Barrett had used physical terror for years. Now he would be using psychological terror too. Joe Symes was followed home each night, and his family kept under constant observation.
They would go down into Harlow, and I would follow them to Harlow. I would stand next to them, they wouldn't know who I was. And I would listen to conversation with my back to them, and we learned bits and pieces about family and brothers and friends and what have you.
In December 1985, while Joe Symes was still at work, his wife and daughter were taken hostage.
The doorbell rang. Mum got up, and I heard all this commotion, and of course, next thing I see, they had Mum, you know, around the throat sort of thing, and their arm round her like that, and had the hand over her mouth. I started getting hold of my handbag. They said, oh, well, you know what we're here for, and that's when it sort of clicked that we're here for Armour Guard.
I was frightened, but we tried to reassure them as in the best way, which is very, very hard. They were not touched. They were not manhandled. They were sat down and made a cup of tea.
I was saying, look, don't hurt my mum, and because she was very, very shaken. They then took us to this table, and they handcuffed us to the leg of the table, each of us. And they were asking us what time my dad came in.
I came home as usual from work, put the car away, unlocked the door. Came in here, saw somebody standing there with a balaclava on and that. And I thought somebody was, you know, playing a joke on me. I said, what the hell are you doing? You know. And then somebody else came in behind me that, you know, and I realised then obviously what they were after.
In his own way, he was a very amazing man. He wasn't. He didn't freak out. He wasn't. He didn't panic. In fact, he asked his wife for his dinner. And I thought to myself, wow, we might not get what we want here, was my first thought, because he was so cool and calculated, if you like.
And they explained in detail they'd been watching the place for months. And they knew exactly, you know, where I went and what I did. And they mentioned at one point that a week or 2 weeks ago on a Thursday, why didn't you unlock the place? And I realised I had an appointment at Chest Hospital. So obviously they must have been watching, like they said.
The more we knew about them, the more pressure they would be under. I mean, if I was to come to your home and I knew your phone number, I knew your business, I knew your husband, I knew, we'll say, intimate things or private things about you, it blows your mind. You can't accept that a stranger can appear on the scene out of nowhere, who's an armed robber, who's going to take you hostage, take you to the bank in the morning and rob it. After a couple of hours, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock-ish, his wife and daughter went upstairs to bed. And it was then that we got the explosive device out of a case.
Throughout 1985, Barrett and Croak had been using a remote-controlled explosive device to terrorise security guards. They threatened to detonate it if the guards tried to raise the alarm. The police warned people not to resist, so Barrett decided a dummy device would be just as effective.
He was put on a guard, it was demonstrated to him, and he was strapped so that the device was at the back, at the bottom of his spine. He was told that if he touched it, if he tried to remove it, it would be fired. But you have to bear in mind,
The touch of a button goes off.
at that time, it wasn't a viable device. It was a dummy, but the guard was under the impression that it was real. And we said, well, that's what's going to be strapped on you, Joe. In the morning, you do as you're told, or you get blown up.
Armed robbers escaped with £200,000 from a security firm in Harlow in Essex this morning. An employee of the firm was held hostage overnight. Vincent Dowd reports.
The gang seized the vault keys and its contents, up to £200,000. The 3 armour guard workers were locked inside. Outside, they were told Mr. Symes' car had been wired to explode. The alarm was raised eventually and bomb disposal experts called. Police are now searching for the gang. Mr. Symes and his family are said still to be in deep shock.
Even now, I suppose I am bitter. They had no right. And I mean, I might be a bit hard, I don't know, but I couldn't ever forgive them.
Barrett's associate, Dave Croak, was supposed to destroy the explosive device. Instead, he simply put it out with the rubbish, where it was found by a schoolboy who took it home. After seeing a Crime Watch programme which described the robbery, he got in touch with the police. By 1986, specialist firearms units confronted armed robbers. As Croak and Barrett set up a bullion van robbery, police lay in wait. They were filmed following a Shields bullion van leaving its South London depot on the 8th of November, 1986.
Thanks very much,
The police saw them ambush the van at Newport Pagnell service station and then moved in to make their arrests further up the M1. The robbers were caught red-handed. Dave Croak was under arrest for the first time in his criminal career. Don Barrett feared that after his lenient treatment as a supergrass, he would face an exemplary sentence of 25 years. But to his amazement, the police offered him another deal.
They said, you can become an SG again for the second time. You will get everything that goes with it. You will get a shorter sentence. You will go into the control units, into the secure units, then you will go into the SG units. You will get everything that goes with it. And as I said, it was an offer I couldn't refuse.
Don Barrett has been disguised in this film. He's the only man to have gone supergrass twice. This lifelong criminal has just been released after serving 7 years of a 17-year sentence. His barrister told the court there was a £250,000 contract out on his life.
If someone comes looking for me, don't miss. But I'll state here, and I'll state it now categorically. Leave me alone, I'll leave him alone. I made myself busy with me, I should make myself busy with him. Having said that, I'm going to disappear into the distance.
You and me, we're not like the rest. We once were the best.
Now that there was a real risk that they'd be grasped by their associates or shot by the police, professional criminals realised it was time to move on from armed robbery.
That we almost made it, but we want.
They saw that drugs would provide bigger profits with fewer risks. For men like former train robber Tommy Wisby, drugs will be the crime of the future.
We wanted it all.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly, moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.
Leave a like and subscribe.